horizontally or vertically?
I see you, yes, horizontally. I think we're doing good.
Okay.
So, welcome everybody. My name is Syed, and I'm super excited to bring you this how to get into DevOps with no experience. And let me introduce to all of you Myra, who is a senior DevOps engineer rather, working for an enterprise company in the US. Hello, Myra. How's it going?
Hi everyone. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. As you said, I am a senior DevOps engineer, and I am an expert in DevOps, cloud, and all things related to that. So I'm also excited to be part of this live and just talk about my experience and also how someone can get into DevOps.
Awesome. So yeah, and the subscribers that we have on our channel at ClayDesk, they all know me. My name is Syed, and I'm the enterprise architect, and of course AWS certified project manager, PMP certified, and all of the certifications that I have. And of course, Myra, you forgot your certifications, by the way. So I think you need to highlight
Yeah.
those as well.
Yeah, I do have like about five AWS certifications, and I also have a Terraform certification. So, yeah, if anyone has any questions about
Awesome.
that, you guys can let us know.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to talk about. We're getting a lot of questions and comments that I've been getting on most of our videos and even courses and from students. Like, um, as a beginner, how do we actually get into DevOps, right? Um, and a lot of the people don't even know what DevOps really is. People typically think that it's just software engineering and it's just coding, and you're just doing programming, right? So today, the objective here, our agenda is to just kind of highlight the, oh, first of all, what is DevOps? We'll talk about that. And then how do you actually get into DevOps if you have no experience, right? So if you're just a beginner
Right.
wanting to start getting into DevOps, how do we get into that? So just a short agenda item and very to the point. But before we dive into how, let's talk about what is DevOps. I mean, where does it, you know, where did it come
Right.
from?
Yeah, so DevOps, as you know, it is an interesting field and an interesting expertise. And as the word says itself, DevOps. So you're basically the bridge between the developer and the operations. So your responsibility is to manage that, bridge between both of those. And how you manage that is basically using a different kind of, tools and different set of expertise to get that working. So for example, I'm not sure if anyone has heard about like CI/CD, so continuous integration and continuous deployment. That is like one of the major concepts of DevOps. So being a DevOps engineer, you're the one responsible for creating that, managing that. And within that whole CI/CD, there are a bunch of other tools that come in that help you actually get that automation set up. So, if you're someone who is like, you want to get into DevOps, the first thing I would suggest is to just get to know about DevOps. What are the concepts? Like, what are you even getting into, right? Like, what will you be working on? What are some of the tools that you need to learn, and at least just get yourself familiar with it. So I think that's like the first step that one should do if someone is interested in DevOps. I guess people are saying that we should rotate our videos because I think we're on our phones. We should have our phones vertical instead of horizontal.
We
Think
should.
so.
I don't know if it
Yeah.
allows you to do that. Let me see if I can.
Yeah,
Is
let me
this
also
better?
try that. Okay, is this better? Yeah, I think this is much better now.
All
What
right. I need.
education is required? Someone just asked us what education is required to get into DevOps. So, to be honest, there's no specific education that you need. To be honest, you can even get into DevOps without a bachelor's degree. All you need is the skills. And the skills is what matters the most. So you could even have a degree in like any tech field. It could be, networking, it could be in cybersecurity, it could be in DevOps, could be in software engineering, and you could still get into DevOps. Or you could even have a degree which is not tech related and still get into it. So I think, yeah, that's what I would say. You don't really need any education as such. The main thing that matters is your skills. I would say that's the main thing that one should
So yeah,
have.
that's great. So but I think in layman terms, just like people who are beginners who basically have no idea of DevOps and then maybe have read some definitions here and there, it's really
Right.
just a software development methodology, right? That combines two aspects. One is the development side, and the other one is the operations side of software development or IT in general. And what it does, it's basically a collaborative and iterative approach that emphasizes automation and continuous delivery of the software development. Um, Whether it's continuous integration, whether it's continuous delivery, or you can do it through infrastructure as a code or monitoring, right? So it just speeds up the software development process, right? Because back in those days when we used to develop software, we used to work in silos, right? So there was dev teams, and they were just doing nothing but just coding, right? And they had no idea what happens after they develop the code. So that code really went to the operations side, and those guys would then do the testing and then make it live. And um,
Mhm.
so DevOps is really is connecting, is a bridge. I call it a bridge between the dev and the ops teams. So yeah, and
Yeah.
that's uh, what that's really all about. But how do we? I guess my next question, if I were to think as a layman, how do we actually get into DevOps, and what are some of the tools that we can actually use? Or maybe we'll talk about certifications later. Uh, but how does someone, as a beginner, I guess, what is the first step? Um,
Yeah.
Mara,
Yeah, do you need
what do you think?
need to get into DevOps? Yeah. So as I said, I think the first step would be just to get yourself familiar with DevOps and its concepts. Now, to do that, you could watch YouTube videos. There are courses online, like even on ClayDesk, that you can enroll in, and then just get yourself familiar with what DevOps is. What are you even getting into? Some of the terms that are used in DevOps, like we just talked about, right? Like software development life cycle, CI/CD. Like what are these things, right? So just getting that understanding your basic concepts, and then once that is done, I would suggest to actually start gaining some skills and getting some skills on some of the most in demand tools. And one of the best tips I would give to actually find out which those in demand skills are is maybe go look at some job descriptions for DevOps engineer, and you'll find many common tools within those job descriptions, like as you said, like Terraform, any like CI/CD tool like Jenkins or GitHub Actions, or like a cloud platforms like AWS. That's like one of the most major expertise that you may need. So I would say, like just identify those tools and then start gaining skills on those. And again, how you gain those skills is you could do your own self learning, like your own self practice, or you could also just watch courses online on YouTube or enroll on courses. And I guess, yeah, that's the way you can at least make a next step after just understanding what DevOps is. And I think someone also asks that, like how long do you think a fresher should study per day for DevOps? Now that's a good question, but it would really depend on how much time and effort you put in, like according to your schedule, right? And or your own self routine. Like for example, when I was getting into DevOps, I used to spend like a lot of time, I used to put a lot of time in watching these online courses, practicing the skills, like hands-on skills myself. So I think it would really depend on your own schedule, but I would say for sure that maybe 1 to 2 hours per day would be a good start. Like because watching those videos, understanding the concepts, maybe just playing around with the skills yourself, that requires some time. So like 1 to 2 hours per day. But if you feel like you have more time, you could also do that. If you feel like you have less, even 1 hour is fine, right? So it's just a matter of your own capacity, to to study per day.
Yeah, and that's great. Thanks for the awesome information. I guess that helps a lot of the beginners. I just want to add to this is that like I always recommend hands-on approach, because the best way
Right.
to learn is just dive to what you want to learn about, right? So and opening up an AWS free tier account, for example, if you want to use and jump into any cloud platform, whether it's AWS or Google Cloud, or you can get into Microsoft Azure. But AWS, of
Right.
course, I'll and all of the students, because it's just easier to work with and get started. You know, get your foot in the door. So just create a free tier AWS account, and I think we'll just put a link in the description so you guys can just go navigate there and just open up a free tier account. And then once you, let's say, go through any of the course or tutorials, right? Um, Whether it's at any of the site, you can just Google. There's tons and tons of resources, or you can go to our blog, and we have a list of all the resources and the sites. You can take a look at that at blog.claydesk.com, and then tutorial, right? And just go step by step, do hands on. Take the next step, just do another hands on exercise, and by the time you know it, you just be second nature to you guys, because it's just easier to just follow a step and then do hands on. Um, for
Right.
example, if you need to create like how to create an EC2 instance, a very simple task, but if you just do it yourself, like in your feature account, it's much easier. Yeah, you're not going to be an expert on day one, but the more you do it, the more you explore, the better you get over time. So that's the best way to get started, I guess. In addition to what Mara just explained, um, into the DevOps field, or any cloud platform. I'm specifically talking about AWS. Is just to go step by step, right? So another thing I want to add quickly is a lot of the students get overwhelmed by the entire cloud ecosystem of the platform, right? Like, oh, geez, this is too much information, or new terms, new terminology. How do I absorb all of this? So, um, and not to worry, because ju- you know it's a learning process. So day one, day two, day three, as you move forward in time, it just becomes easier and easier, right? It's just that you need to dedicate a few hours every day and get started.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you made it. These courses, or whatever documentation you read online, you learn a lot of theory, but the most important things at the end of the day is hands-on skills. And that is, again, maybe find some courses which provide those hands-on skill to you that you could maybe recreate on your own, and play around with the resources, do some personal projects. Because at the end of the day, thing that you'll have to do is do like work for them. You'll need to provide them the skills. Like, they won't ask you that, what is S3 or what is an EC2 instance. They will tell you that, hey, can you please create me 3 AWS S3 buckets, and these need to be all the configurations for it. Now, if you have not done that before, and if you just read about it, it's going to be really tough for you. So you have to go around, figure it out at that moment. However, if you've done this before, and as you said, if you're already comfortable with the AWS services and the configurations, then it's going to be a quick, easy thing for you, and then you won't be even like, you'll be like, oh, this is an easy task for me. So this is just like one example, but the same example goes for all the other like services in AWS or any other tools. But again, right, no one can learn everything at one time. It will take you time. It will take you step by step, like, processes to learn all the tools and learn all the skills. And there will be challenges. Like, no one's perfect. No one knows everything. So even for my, like, I am like, now I'm working as a senior DevOps, where there's still some times where I get a task but those hands-on skills is what is the most important.
Yeah, like you mentioned, constant learning, and tech is one of those fields where it just learning does
Yeah.
not stop, right? And it's something that um, if you um, continue to learn, and if you have an aptitude for learning, perfect, then you're the right person for to get into tech, right? So that's another key point as a beginner wanting to get into DevOps is you need to be able to have the appetite for learning, right? Let me take a couple of questions. Aviation Extreme
Yeah.
is asking some great questions. One of the questions he's asking is, let's see, where did it go?
I can also see them on my screen. Wait. Oh, I think someone asked, when it comes to studying, should we learn one thing at a time or two or more subjects at a time? Because if I start out with Linux, should I simultaneously learn Python also? Okay, so I think he just asked, or she, I'm not sure who that person is, but they asked that, should you just study one thing first and then move on to the second one, or should you learn stuff simultaneously? I think that would really depend. In DevOps or in cloud, you will have to learn stuff simultaneously. You can give one, will have to learn. A lot of the things are codependent, right? For example, if like you're doing a project in AWS, you're like setting up this code pipeline in AWS. For that, you would need a lot of other like skills. Now when I say skills, that would mean like maybe you would need some experience with Git and Git commands. Maybe you would need some experience with Linux, if you want to set up a code pipeline. Maybe you would just need some understanding of like the build process, like how the deploys are done, or maybe you need a little bit of experience of coding in that, or like scripting. So so everything is just not like one tool and you will just learn it and know everything. There are a bunch of tools and a bunch of skill sets which are kind of like dependent on each other. So I would say learning them side by side, like simultaneously, is a good option. But again, it would also depend on what tool you're exactly learning, how much effort it requires to learn at that moment. I think that's what I would say
Yeah.
for that.
So in terms of tools, right? So you mentioned Git, you mentioned Terraform, you mentioned
Yeah.
code pipeline. There's so many tools that you can use, but I think
Yeah.
to start as a person who's a beginner, um, and of course you also mentioned Python and be able to program, and that's sometimes scary to most newcomers because
Yeah.
um, that they don't want to be able to learn programming, right? And the good thing about DevOps is that you don't really require to be a programmer into DevOps, right? Um,
Mhm.
over time, you will learn some scripting um, knowledge, Bash scripting or shell scripting, but
Yep.
to be a full programmer is not necessary to get into DevOps, right? Um,
Yes.
tools that you should be comfortable with and you should start learning. Like I said, hands on, right? So if we're talking about Git, make sure you understand version control, you read about it, and then you also learn how to use Git commands, learn some commands, create some branches,
Mm-hmm.
just play around with some basic projects that, of course, you can take a look at and just follow along, right? And just work out these tutorials. And what will happen over time is that you will be able to take all these different tools and pieces that you're learning, and they will all fall into place, right? And that's where you will start to understand what DevOps really is, how to automate the entire pipeline, the software development pipeline, or the, as we call it, the DevOps pipeline. Um, so that way, and then the next learning curve will become easier, right? It'll be easier and easier as you progress and start to learn
Right.
more tools. I'm gonna take another question here. Oh, I'm sorry, you're going to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that yes, I think you said it right. And tool, or when you learn a skill in the start, in the start it's going to be like very tough, and it will be very challenging for you. But as you said, like once you get comfortable with it, like maybe like a year later, it will be on your mind. It will be so easy for you. Like maybe, let's talk about like Terraform or like or any like Git commands. Like in the start, like even when I learned them, I used to like go search them up on Google and be like, oh, what is that Git command for to do this. But now, like because I've done it so many times, for me it's like in my head. Like I just quickly run that command and I just go on with it. So that's the thing. Like that's the nature of learning, as you said. It will take you some time, and it's all about practice. Like how you practice those skills and how you practice the just like on an everyday basis your tools that you use.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly how it is. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm going to take a question. How long would it take to get to a level where you can start working in this industry and have a good pay? Um,
Mm. Yeah, that's a really
so
good question. Yeah. Do you want to
go
answer
ahead.
that or should I?
Yeah, answer it. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so I think like, again, it will very much depend on your own experience, the resume that you build, the skill set that you have gained. Like, because if you want to get into this industry, there's competition, right? Like there are so many other people who want to get into tech, who want to get into DevOps, who want to get into cloud, right? So you need to stand out to actually get the chance to get an interview or eventually land that job. So to do that, there are many different things. Like, you can gain a lot of skills that we're talking about. Like, try to gain as many hands-on skills as you can. The other thing that I would say is take some certifications, because that also really help you, give you an advantage on your resume. Like for example, a recruiter looks at two resumes and they see that on one resume a person has like five certifications, but like the other one does not have any certifications at all. So as like a natural thing, maybe that recruiter would be inclined toward like messaging the one with the certifications first. So these are the kind of advantages that you can take of the industry. Like maybe take certifications, have a strong profile on LinkedIn, like have like a lot of networking, and do your own like personal projects. And it's just a matter of like building your own portfolio, and that's the way you can competition that you have and get started into DevOps. And again, and you also asked like and have a good
About
pay,
the
right? So yeah, the pay,
yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that's exactly the way. If you have a better amount of skills, if you have better like certifications, if you have a stronger presence, that's the way you can land a higher pay a job, right? You would probably not look for a junior level position. You would look for a senior level position, and that makes sense. A senior would have a better pay compared to a junior level position. So I think it's just a matter of, again, that portfolio that you make for yourself, and how good you make that portfolio so you can get that advantage in this industry.
Yeah, and by the way, whoever is joined in, I want to mention that we'll be doing these streams on a regular basis, so that not only you'll be able to learn how to get into DevOps, but also we'll be talking about many topics, such as preparing you guys for interview questions, how to run specific projects. So everything in the DevOps space, everything in the tech space, this is the channel for you guys. So thanks for tuning in. I certainly appreciate that, and make sure you hit the
Right.
like button. In we appreciate your support, because based on several of the questions and queries, we decided to do this live streaming because it's much easier to talk to you guys one on one and then answer your questions. And then, of course, as we do these more, you'll be able to learn hands on and what's going on. By the way, the pay structure for an entry level DevOps here in the US is six figures, right? So you're well over $100,000 a year, even though you're starting off, right? Um, that leads us to the next part of this live stream is the fact that what certifications are necessary. And I'll have Mara
Mhm.
answer this. The first certification that a person getting into DevOps should prepare for and take, and what is
Mhm.
the impact?
Yeah, no, I think that's also a really good question around certifications. The certifications, to be honest, really much again depend on what niche you're getting into. So, for example, if you're getting into cloud and DevOps, you should focus on cloud certifications, and those certifications can again vary from the expertise that you're gaining. So, for example, if you are a learning skill set around AWS, then you should target AWS certifications. Now AWS has their own, like, path for certifications, from like beginner level certification, which is the cloud practitioner certification, to intermediate ones, which are like solutions architect associate, developer associate, sysops associate, and then this, the list goes on. Like, there's a professional level certification that you can get for solutions architect, DevOps, and then there's only like even like specialty exams like networking and security. So, there's this whole step and paths that you can follow to take all the certifications in AWS. Similarly, you'll find a similar pattern for Azure, like Microsoft certifications. They also have cloud certifications that you can take. So one thing, it would really depend on which platform you're focusing on. So if you have more expertise in AWS, try getting some of the AWS certifications. And aside from that, there are many other certifications too around DevOps tools. So for example, Terraform, like HashiCorp, has Terraform, and they even have a Terraform certification. So you could also take that certification. And then if you talk about Kubernetes also have their own certification that you can take. So there are different, these providers who have their different certifications around the DevOps expertise, and it would really much depend on which one you want to focus on, which one do you have more experience in, and which one do you want to target. And this is the way that will help you actually get that advantage again in interviews, and then eventually landing that job that you are looking for. And I think someone asked a question that how can a fresher get past the typical 5+ year experience like many jobs ask to get an interview. And I
Yeah,
think that's a really good question. That's a really good question because when I was even applying for jobs, I also used to see the same thing. Like, all the job description used to have like 10+ year experience, like 8+ year experience. And I used, even though I did not have that, because if you're someone who is looking for their first job, you can get very overwhelmed and scared by that. Like, they would not accept me, they would not have me as for an interview, they would not accept me in the job. But to be honest, from my experience, that is not something you should look at all, because
yeah,
they may have 8 years experience written on their job description, but they do not really have it as a mandatory. If you have the skills, if you have the certifications, if you can prove to them that you have that expertise that they are looking for, then you will land that interview, you will land that job. So yeah, that's what I would say. And if you want to add something on that, you can do that.
yeah. Sure. That's one thing that's a good question, because typically when we browse through jobs at LinkedIn or whatever, you want to find jobs, right, for DevOps engineers or even entry level DevOps engineers. The job description typically says, "Hey, we need 5 years experience. We need 8 years experience." So as a newcomer, right, as an entry level DevOps, and you're like, "Well, I don't have that experience. What do I do? Um, how do I even apply, or should I apply, or should I not apply?" Right. So that's the first thing that comes to your mind. Um, but yeah, go ahead, apply, because it doesn't really matter, because it doesn't make sense, because all jobs
Right.
require number of years of experience. But if you're a newbie, how do you get into that, right? Either way, apply, and definitely you will land some interviews, right? And it's at that interview, like Mara, you mentioned, is where you prove yourself, that you have the skills necessary that is being described in the job description. And if you can, um, be good at the interviews, which we will do right here, we're going to cover all these different scenario-based questions, interview-based questions, because guys, I interview, and of course, Mara, you being a senior DevOps engineer, you also interview a lot of people, and
Yep.
then we know a lot of these questions, what to ask and what to look for. So if even a new person kind of has the skills, whether it's through a certification, because certification really validates your skills, right? So if you become an AWS certified cloud practitioner, then I would know, for example, that hey, you have the basic fundamental understanding of all the AWS services or majority of the AWS services. And if you are an
Right.
AWS certified architect, then I would know that hey, you would have the understanding of the basic architecture and some in-depth understanding of VPCs and AWS Route 3 and other load
Right.
balancer setup, EKS, ECS, and other services that are required um, for an AWS certified solutions architect, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so regardless of the number of experience, the years they use, just go ahead and apply. And once you get the interview, that's where you can tell them, hey, I have say a year worth of experience, or I'm just a new person starting off, but I have the skills. I've done this, I've done that. Prove it to you um, that I've worked on certain projects, and then just kind of highlight those projects and just go with the flow. And then we'll prepare you in our, of course, upcoming live streams, how to go about doing so. What are some of the specific questions that we ask when we? I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, for sure. I think you mentioned you stated it well. At the interview level, that's one of the most I would say main part of the process, because interviews matter a lot. Like how you talk in the interviews, what you mention in the interviews, like your introduction, the questions that you ask in the interview, your whole personality as such, right? Like are you confident? Are you like nervous? Like all those kind of things matter. Like skills matter, yes, but like the whole impression that you give also matters a lot in the interviews, because companies, they're hiring for expert people, but they're also hiring for people like like as a person. So they want to get a people like get a person in their company who they like, right? Who they think can fit in their company
Like
culture. So this
communication skills,
is also
team player, and being able to communicate with the team.
Yep, like having a positive attitude, being a team player, like having that like having that nature to learn new things, take up challenges. Like all those soft skills matter too, aside from like all the technical skills. So there should be a balance, and all of these things we will talk about more, in our upcoming lives, and also in our channel. So make sure to like and subscribe if you have already not done that. But I think someone also asked another question in the chat. Um,
Let me
do,
says
Oh, so do I need the AWS developer certification to get a DevOps opportunity? I think that's a good question, and the answer to that would be maybe. Like it would be really good to have it, and it would give you an advantage in the industry because you would already have the developer certificate. You again, there would be that validation, and there would be that that you have already passed that certification. However, you can still get a DevOps opportunity without that certification. So I won't say that it's mandatory, but it can help you a lot if you do have that. So these are the like it's a good certificate to have, especially for DevOps. But again, it's not mandatory. You will learn a lot of good things after if you want to take that certification, and especially again a lot of the things related to AWS DevOps tools. But I won't say that it's mandatory to get a DevOps opportunity.
yeah, and there are so many different types of certifications that, of course, we'll cover those in depth in subsequent live streams, like the AWS Certified Developer Associate and the Solutions Architect Associate and the Solutions Architect Professional, and what the differences are.
Right.
Each of these certifications, they have a specific objective, right? And they validate certain skill level or skill sets that are required. But yet,
Mhm.
most of them are there too. So definitely, it does help. So certifications, of course, is just validation of your skills. So the first
Right.
thing that the employer would look for is, yeah, your experience. And even if you don't have the experience, you have the certifications? That means, are you skilled, right? So these certifications simply show or tell the employer that, yeah, I'm skilled, I have the knowledge, that's how I got certified, right? And I've done projects. And going back to your earlier point, Mara, you mentioned like having soft skills and technical skills, because most of the tech people, most of us getting into tech, we're technical, right? So we don't have that communication skills yet, or being able to understand the soft skills that are required
Yeah.
also when landing a job. Even though you may be the most tech person, right? Um, the most wired
Yeah.
person, and really understanding or having the soft skills is equally important. So we'll be covering those as well. All right, so let's see if I can get another question here. All right, what? Um, it's kind of like related. Do we need like a degree uh, to get into DevOps, like a computer science degree
Mm.
or software degree or bachelor's degree, or um, are these certifications enough
Enough.
to get
Right.
into?
Yeah. That's a good question too. Like we have touched base on this a little bit before, but yeah, we could talk more on it. I would say that it's not mandatory at all, because again, the most important thing that you need is the skills. If you have the skills, if you have like maybe again like certifications to validate those skills, or like your own like personal projects, and like again, that confidence that you can do the job, then you can get a job in DevOps without a degree. Because again, like in degree, in a bachelor's degree, if you do that, all the things that you learn is mostly theory based. So at the end of the day, at the job, you need those hands-on skills. So even if you do the degree, if you learn the theory knowledge, once you land the job, you will have to learn the skills. So isn't it better that you just learn the skills before or during your degree maybe, and then you just land the job at like again at a higher advantage. So I would say, like, I don't think a degree is needed to get into DevOps. Skills is what is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's rightly so, because in my experience, recruiters or employers or even hiring people,
Mhm.
I look for skills because once you hire someone, right? Um, let's
Mhm.
say you hire a DevOps engineer, the first thing you're going to do is hand them over a laptop, right? A company
Yeah.
laptop, and then tell them, hey, your job. This is what you got to do. You got to spin up a cluster, right? EKS cluster. And hey, we don't learn these in college, right? We don't. There's no course that teaches you all about
Right.
Kubernetes, right? Form. So skills is where you actually start on the job. And of course, I always recommend to all of my students, for example, that hey, get skills, get certified, and then continue if you can, if you have the time and the dedication and the passion to pursue your bachelor's degree or your master's, or whatever you are, right? In terms of education. So
Right.
instead of the traditional mindset where you get a degree first and then you get certified, find a job, I recommend get skilled, get certified, get a job, and then continue and pursue your
Yeah.
degree. Um, all right, so let's see another question. Certification is like, well, that's really a comment, right?
Right.
Certification is handles on the cake, and the cake being your experience in DevOps. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a good
uh,
point for sure. Yep.
Good point. All right, so a couple of more questions coming in. Yeah, guys. By the way, ask these questions and do click on the like button if you see it, because that's really
Yep.
helpful. All right,
Yeah,
so
we would appreciate.
Timur is asking, as a starter, which should I learn first? Kubernetes, Docker, Terraform, CloudFormation, Ansible, etc. There's a lot to learn. So, what do you
Yeah.
recommend start without overloading myself? And um, that's exactly what we
Yeah.
just talked about, Ron, right? Because there's so many tools, and we don't know where to get started, and they're just overwhelming, right? And most of the tools that I just read here is Kubernetes, and these are tools that you will learn as time progresses. But if you are a newbie and getting into DevOps, because that's this live stream is just about that, so I'm not going to get into details about what Kubernetes is.
Right.
Maybe we'll do a session on that. Of course, each of these sessions on each of these tools. If you were just starting off into DevOps, focus on the basic fundamentals, which is if you are, let's say, getting, or if you've selected Amazon, right, or AWS as your cloud platform, then get certified as a cloud practitioner. Get that certification, right? That would give you a very solid understanding of all the basic or majority of the basic services that AWS has to offer, right? And also give you a solid understanding about the well architected framework that AWS has to offer. That's a great start. Now, once you start with that, then you can decide and then pick a path. And these are different paths, right? So because Kubernetes is a whole new world, Docker, Terraform is an infrastructure as a code is a different path. So then you can sort of like specialize and think of where do you want to be, what is your skill set, what do you like, if you like to code, um, then yeah, go with maybe Terraform, right? So again, these tools are uh, beyond the entry level, right? So at the beginning, just work with the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner certification, understand the basics, and then you can decide. And then, of course, we'll be doing several live streams as to what DevOps career paths are out there, and we'll be highlighting each of these career paths because DevOps is just so many tools, so many areas that you can
Yeah.
actually navigate. If you're skilled, if you're more into coding, perfect. Then we'll get you that in that direction. If you are into infrastructure or platform engineering, then there's another way. So yeah, we'll talk about that in detail. But hopefully that kind of answers the question. If you want to add something, Mara, go ahead.
Yeah, to add on that, I also just wanted to say that, that initially the best skill set that you can learn is just like a cloud platform itself. Like, as you mentioned, like AWS, for example. So you could like start learning about AWS, and once you start gaining those skills in AWS, you're gonna learn a lot of few different things, a lot of different cloud concepts and DevOps concepts, and just learn a lot of other, like, different terms and concepts. However, I think, as you said, DevOps is very broad. There's so many tools inside it, and one person cannot learn everything. So take it step by step. For example, like you mentioned, that whole list of Ansible, Terraform, Kubernetes. Like, Kubernetes is super challenging. So take it step by step. Maybe just pick one, like maybe AWS. Just learn that first, then move on to the second one. Like, for example, Terraform. You could just learn that, or like Terraform and CloudFormation, they're very similar. So maybe you just learn one, right? And you could just do that. And then Docker, Kubernetes, they also have very some familiarities between, like similarities between them. So you could just focus on one of those. So you just take it step by step in that sense. And again, don't overwhelm yourself by reading so many tools out there. It takes time to learn all these skills. It's not an easy thing that, hey, I can just learn Kubernetes in 1 month. Like, it's that's not possible, to be honest. Like, so it will take you time to learn these tools. But again, if you can learn them, like, side by side, like multitask, then that would be ideal.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so so I think yeah, we've covered pretty much several key points in
Yep.
understanding how DevOps with no experience, right? Um, and we have had some great comments. So I think we should wrap this up for now, and then hopefully we'll in our next live stream we'll get into some more specifics on different types of certifications, maybe DevOps career path. So I'll just create a post on our channel here, so everyone would know exactly what the agenda would be for the next live stream. Since this is our first
Right.
live stream, we're just starting. This is awesome, and I see a lot of um, people engaging with us and asking questions. This is awesome. That's just great. So yeah, I'd like to thank you, Myra, for joining in and giving us your input. Um, and then hopefully all of the people who are currently watching. I'd like to thank you all also, and of course, post your questions in the comments. So the more questions we get, the easier it will be for us to give you all that you would need to either start your journey in tech, or if you're already in tech, how do you actually go about and then move your way forward and bring your career to the
Right.
next level. So thank you all, and of course, make sure to subscribe and give it the thumbs up, and then we certainly appreciate it. And thank you again, Myra. Thank you all, and then we look forward to
Yeah.
having you in the next.
Yep, same here. This was really fun, and yeah, we're gonna be doing more lives. So guys, make sure to subscribe and like, and just make sure to join our next live with questions, and we'll be there to answer those for you guys.
Awesome.
Okay then.
Thank you all.
Bye.
All right.
Yep. Thank
Bye bye.
you.